Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Lesson of the Holy Quran by thinker of Quran Allama Ghulam Ahmad Parwez Rahimahullah. Surah Al Fatiha 1 verse 6. My dear ones, in the previous lesson we saw that those who have faith in God and those who strive to reach the objective set by Him, their intense longing turned into a prayer upon their lips. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqima 1 verse 5. Guide us to the straight path. This was a principle, a formula, a theory, or an idea that was abstract, not concrete. The style of the Quran is such that whenever it presents a principle or theory, it does not leave it as merely conceptual or ideal. Rather, it explains it in a tangible manner so that no one may fall into self-deception, thinking on their own that they are following the principle, or be misled by others who might claim to be on the right path while actually being astray. Both forms of misguidance exist in the world, self-deception and deception spread by others. To protect against both, the Quran, whenever it states a truth, it does not leave it in the abstract. It presents concrete examples so that there remains no doubt, confusion, or illusion in discerning whether what we desire is truly that which God has spoken of, or whether it is a false substitute. Comparative explanation of the meaning of An'amta alayhim. Regarding the straight path, the very next words are Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim 1 verse 6. The path of those upon whom you have bestowed your blessings. Here you see that the truth moved from the abstract to the concrete. The phrase An'amta alayhim 1 verse 6 is in the past tense, and within this lies a profound reality of the Quran. The style of the Quran is such that whenever it presents a principle, truth, theory, or law, it supports it with historical evidence. It brings forth the stories of past nations and says, look into the pages of history. See what befell the nations that acted upon this principle and what destruction overtook those who violated it. Thus, the Quran substantiates its truths with historical testimony, and history belongs to the past. That is why when the Quran presents such principles in concrete form, it always uses the past tense, declaring these events have already occurred, those people have already passed, and history itself bears witness to who they were. Just as it has spoken regarding succession on earth, istikhlaf fil ard, this verse has appeared not once, but I believe several times in our lessons. Historical evidence regarding istikhlaf fil ard. At this point, I wish to present how historical evidence is brought forth concerning istikhlaf fil ard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is God's promise, this is His law, that whoever among you believes and follows the program of righteous deeds, it is His unchanging law that He will grant them succession upon this earth, He will grant them governance in this world. Now in religion and mysticism, it was said that istikhlaf fil ard refers to spiritual ranks, while the jurists claimed that it refers to the land of paradise where this succession will be granted. The Quran refuted all such notions. Immediately after this, the Quran uses the past tense and says, كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, just as He granted succession on earth to those before them. Thus, we turn to history, and the Quran presents the testimony of past nations, declaring this was the nation whom we granted succession on earth. Look at their governance, their state, their strength, their authority. History itself clarifies what istikhlaf fil ard means. After such visible and concrete evidence, no one can deceive themselves nor be deceived by others. In line with this principle, the Quran says, Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, the path of those upon whom you bestowed your blessings. Surah Al Fatiha 1 verse 6. Clarification of blessings and mun'am alayhim in the light of the Quran and historical evidence. Now, two matters become necessary for us to understand. One, What is meant by blessing, ni'ammat, according to the Quran? 2. What does history tell us about the nations who were granted these blessings? The meaning of ni'ammat will be determined by the Quran itself. Then, by examining the stories of those nations who were granted these blessings, those referred to as mun'am alayhim, we will know their condition. If our condition becomes like theirs, then we may consider ourselves among them, the people upon whom God's blessings descended. But if our condition does not resemble theirs, then either we are deluding ourselves or we are being deceived. Reflect carefully. Merely from the fact that the Quran uses the past tense here, directing us to the past, how significant this becomes. My dear ones, the standard for testing the claims of the Quran is the testimony of history. Thus it says, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. This is the path, the straight path upon which the showers of God's blessings descend. What are these divine blessings? What was the condition of those who were granted them? All of this is explained within the Quran, and from these I will present a few examples within the limits of time to show how the Quran identifies the blessed nations, those whom it calls an'amta alayhim, and what is truly meant by ni'ammat. Meaning of the word ni'ammat according to the Arabic language. Its root is nun, ayn, mim. Among the Arabs, there was a plant. Whether it still exists today, I do not know, but I found it mentioned in the lexicons. They called it the na'ima. Its special quality was that its leaves were soft, delicate, lush, and fresh, and it grew upon water. Therefore, its freshness never diminished. Soft, delicate, verdant, ever fresh, and likely that plant grew up, rising high. For in this root, nun ayn mim, there is also the meaning of elevation and prominence. Thus, a na'ama was used for a building constructed upon a mountain, and also for a high sign or flag by which the way could be identified. From these meanings, it becomes clear that every aspect of human life that is pleasant, spacious, gentle, prosperous, elevated, and dignified is the manifestation of ni'ammat. Those whose lives are of this nature are called mun'am alayhim, those upon whom God's blessings are bestowed. This is the summary of which the details are found at various places in the Quran, and I will present a few of them to you at this time. Mention of the nation of Bani Israel in the Holy Quran as a mirror for the life and death of nations. In Surah Al-Baqarah, the story of Bani Israel is narrated in great detail. In addition, at many other places in the Quran, this story is repeated, because within it lie the eternal principles of the rise and fall of nations. Their historical testimony of these eternal principles is found in the story of this nation. Therefore, their story has been repeated with special elaboration, and also because at the time of the Quran's revelation, this nation was present before the Arabs themselves. They lived among them. Their humiliation and disgrace were visible to the whole world, and this condition has remained with them until today. It is another matter, and I'll explain later, that through the support of others they managed to establish a small state. But history tells us that their name was the Wandering Jew, nomads, wanderers of the desert, without home or settlement. Yet before this, there was a period when they possessed the grandeur of Daud and the splendor of Solomon. Their rise was theirs, and their decline was theirs. This did not happen by chance or accident, but according to God's immutable laws. That is why I've said that the principles of the rise and fall of nations are witnessed in the history of this nation. Let us see. The Quran first begins their story as mun'am alayhim, those who were granted blessings, by saying in Surah Al-Baqarah, يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم. O children of Israel, remember my blessing which I bestowed upon you. What was that blessing? The children of Israel were shackled in the chains of slavery and subjugation under a tyrant king like Pharaoh. In other words, they were a subjugated nation. So what was that blessing that they were reminded of?
Reminder of the blessings bestowed upon the nation of Bani Israel. My dear ones, that blessing was وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. Remember that blessing when we saved you from Pharaoh's people, who inflicted upon you grievous torment, slaughtering your sons and sparing your women. In this was a great trial from your Lord. This was the blessing that God freed them from the slavery and subjugation of a tyrant king like Pharaoh. He would relentlessly torment them, and the greatest torment was that whenever he saw someone in their nation with potential to rise, he would crush them immediately, while elevating those devoid of courage and manliness. I will explain in detail later in Surah Al-Baqarah the meaning of يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ. Commonly, it is taken to mean that Pharaoh killed the male children of Bani Israel at birth and spared the females. But its meaning is deeper. Abnaul Qawm refers to those with qualities of manliness, courage, and ability to rise. And yuzabbihuna does not only mean slaughter or kill. It also means to debase, to humiliate, to suppress. Thus, the Quran says this was a great torment, that Pharaoh enslaved them, and whenever someone arose with potential to challenge, he crushed them immediately, while elevating those lacking in courage and manliness. This was a severe punishment, a humiliating trial, the torment in which they were trapped. Now the question arises, what was the blessing? The answer is, وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ, that we saved you from Pharaoh's people. So the first thing history and the Quran present before us is that deliverance from the grip of a tyrant ruler like Pharaoh is a blessing of God. Yet this freedom from slavery is only the negative aspect. It means they were no longer subjugated, they gained freedom. But as I have said earlier regarding salvation, this is not an achievement in itself, it is merely release from torment, escape, deliverance. After this, the Quran presents the positive aspect of the blessing. Ya Bani Israel adhkuru ni'mati allati an'amtu alaykum wa anni faddaltukum ala al-alamin. O children of Israel, remember my blessing which I bestowed upon you, and that I granted you superiority over all nations. In other words, Mun'im alayhim refers to a nation that holds a distinguished and elevated position among its contemporaries, not merely equal to other nations, but far ahead and superior. This is what the Quran means by فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. I gave you superiority over all nations. Similarly, when the Quran addressed the Muslim Ummah, the community of believers, it said, وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ, and you will be the highest. Here, a'laun means dominant over all, above all. This implies not just walking alongside other nations, but rising above all nations of the world. As Allama Iqbal, 1877-1938 expressed, Momin balai har bala tare. The believer is higher than every height.
The honor of a believer does not accept anyone being his equal in dignity. The believer's identity is that, no matter how high someone may rise, he rises higher still. No matter how exalted a nation may become, the believer's nation stands above it, dominant over it. This is what is meant by Balae har bala tare, higher than every height. And further it is said,
Ghairate o bar na tabad hum sare. His honor does not tolerate an equal. His honor does not only refuse to accept anyone surpassing him, his honor does not even allow another nation to stand shoulder to shoulder with him.
The nation upon whom God's blessings are showered has two aspects. Negative aspect. It is not enslaved by anyone. It is free from all forms of bondage. Positive aspect. It is exalted above its contemporary nations, distinguished and superior. This is the first meaning of ni'mat, and this blessing found expression in prayer. Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim, the path of those upon whom you bestowed your blessings. If a nation that rises with this longing is under the dominance of a tyrant ruler, or indeed under any human authority other than God, even if it enjoys prosperity or even possesses its own government, yet if God's laws are not enforced, then it remains a nation of slaves. Thus, the first condition of a blessed nation is freedom from non-divine authority and governance. The second condition is that it stands superior among its contemporary nations. These are the two signs of a nation upon whom God's blessings are showered.
The greatest sign of Sirat al-Mustaqim is freedom to live under God's commands. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqima. The first sign, the first objective, the first stage of Sirat al-Mustaqim is that the nation is free, possessing authority to live under God's laws and standing exalted among its contemporaries. My dear ones, in the story of Bani Israel, this superiority reached its peak during the times of Prophet Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam, and Prophet David, Dawood alayhi salam. The Quran records Solomon's acknowledgement in prayer. رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ وَعَلَى وَالِدَيَّ. O my Lord, grant me the ability to be grateful for the blessing you bestowed upon me and upon my parents. This shows how the statement, فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ, I gave you superiority over all nations, was realized in the era of David and Solomon. Their grandeur, power, and authority were described as God's blessing. The human body of clay is a means for the development of the self, not the ultimate purpose. I have explained earlier that the ultimate purpose of human life is the development and training of the self, the nafs, the khudi, so that it gains maturity and strength, becoming capable of traversing the stages of life beyond this worldly existence. But on this earth, under God's system, the training and growth of the self occurs on the material plane and through material means. Even the human body itself is a physical body, and within it, this entire process takes place. Thus, the body is not the ultimate purpose, but it is the necessary means. As I explained with the example of a horse, the horse is not the purpose itself, but a means to reach a destination. Yet for the journey, the horse must be healthy, strong, and well-trained. A weak or unruly horse makes the journey impossible. Similarly, the body is not the ultimate purpose, but it is the necessary means for achieving the purpose. Therefore, it must be strong, healthy, and suitable. This is why the Quran first says, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً, our Lord, grant us good in this world. And then adds, وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً, and good in the hereafter. Thus, the blessings of this world, the resources, means, and facilities available in abundance, ease, and prosperity are also among God's blessings. Scattering of blessings throughout the universe is a great favor of God. Now look at the verses of Surah An-Nahl, where it is said that these blessings are for the entire humanity, not for any particular nation. وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّن بُيُوتِكُمْ سَكَنًا. Allah is the one who made for you houses in which you find peace and comfort.
وَجَعَلَ لَكُم مِّن جُلُودِ الْأَنْعَامِ بِيُودًا تَسْتَخِفُونَهَا. And He made for you tents from the skins of cattle, which you find light to carry. These are houses made of bricks and stones, fixed in one place, suitable for settled urban life. But for nomadic wandering tribes, today here, tomorrow there, He provided another blessing. From the hides of animals, you can make tents, easy to carry on your shoulders wherever you wish. يَوْمَ ظَعْنِكُمْ وَيَوْمَ إِقَامَتِكُمْ. On the day of your travel and the day of your stay. Thus, you have both permanent houses and portable shelters. وَمِنْ أَصْوَافِهَا وَأَوْبَارِهَا وَأَشْعَارِهَا أَثَاثًا وَمَتَاعًا إِلَى حِينٍ. And from their wool, fur, and hair, you make furnishings and goods for a time. These animals, camels, sheep, goats, provide milk to drink, meat to eat, hide to use, and wool to make blankets, tents, and clothing. See how all of this is given by God, His blessings that not only make your physical life comfortable, but also serve as means and resources for achieving higher purposes. وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّمَّا خَلَقَ ظِلَالًا وَجَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ الْجِبَالِ أَكْنَانًا وَجَعَلَ لَكُمْ سَرَابِيلَ تَقِيكُمُ الْحَرَّ وَسَرَابِيلَ تَقِيكُمْ بَأْسَكُمْ. Allah made for you shades from what He created, shelters in the mountains, garments to protect you from heat, and armor to protect you in battle. God provided shelters in the valleys and caves of mountains, peaceful, comfortable, protective places. He gave you clothing to shield from heat and armor to safeguard in war. Consider how He has provided everything necessary for the preservation, nourishment, and growth of your physical life. كَذَلِكَ يُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُسْلِمُونَ. Thus does Allah complete His blessings upon you, so that you may submit. All these arrangements of blessings are for one purpose, that you bow in submission to God's laws, free from worldly anxieties, living in peace and contentment with every provision available. The existence of the universe demands that man submit to God's commands. These blessings may also be available to a disbeliever, but the difference between a disbeliever and a believer is this. The disbeliever uses them according to his own desires, while the believer recognizes that they are given so that he may submit to God's laws. Through this submission, his own self develops and universal nurturing, Rububiyat Alameen, is established. This means not keeping these blessings confined to oneself, but sharing them with others. For God is praised as Rabbul Alameen, the sustainer of all worlds. Therefore, you too must adopt the way of universal nurturing, extending blessings beyond yourself to all humanity. Ibnul Manama, the son of divine blessings. My dear ones, now listen to another point and rejoice. Among the Arabs, after receiving blessings, what was the way by which they expressed true appreciation of those blessings? They had a term, Ibnul Na'ama, meaning the son of divine blessings. Who was this? The Arabs called Ibnul Na'ama that person who stood upon the edge of a well, calling out to the thirsty passerby, "Come, drink this cool, sweet water." You know how great a blessing water was. But for them, water became a true blessing only when one stood at the well and offered it freely to others, calling them to share. This is the difference between a disbeliever and a believer, my dear ones. One lives according to his own desires and laws, while the other uses God's blessings according to the principles and values laid down by Him. For the believer, receiving a blessing means not only drinking from the well himself, but also inviting others to drink, sharing it openly. How remarkable that the Arabs had such a broad and generous concept, that one stands at the well and calls out to travelers, "Come, share in this blessing with me." And this is what the Quran meant when it said, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُسْلِمُونَ, so that you may submit. That is, blessings are given so that you bow to God's values and laws. The Quran also clarifies its meaning through contrasts. When the Quran wants to show the benefits of light, it says, think about the harms of darkness. This is explaining through opposites. Here, after listing all the provisions of life as blessings, it says, one nation uses them under God's laws, and their blessings increase and multiply. But if they are hoarded, hidden, and not shared, then what happens? The result of hiding God-given blessings is fear and hunger. Further in the same surah, God explains with an example. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا قُرْيَةً. Allah sets forth the example of a town. كَانَتٍ آمِنَةً مُطْمَحِنَّةً. It was secure and peaceful. They had both external safety and inner tranquility. No fear, no grief. Their condition was, يَأْتِيهَا رِزْقُهَا رَغَدٌ مِّن كُلِّ مَكَانٍ. Abundant provision came to them from every direction.
but then they denied the blessings of Allah. فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ. The root of kufr, kafara, means to cover, to conceal. They concealed the blessings, hoarded them, kept them from the needy, refusing to make them a means of universal nurturing, rabubiyate alameen. This is what is called kufranun ni'mah, ingratitude for blessings. The result, فَأَذَاقَهَا اللَّهُ لِبَاسَ الْجُوءِ وَالْخَوْفِ. Allah made them taste the garment of hunger and fear. When blessings were present, they lived in comfort. When blessings were withdrawn, they suffered hunger and fear. Thus, hunger and fear are punishments from God, imposed when a nation hoards blessings for selfish gain, instead of sharing them for humanity's nurturing. And the Quran adds, Bima kanu yasna'un. This was because of what they themselves did. God did not withhold his gifts, rather the wrong system they established brought this result. Instead of using blessings according to divine laws, they concealed them, preventing them from becoming a source of universal sustenance for mankind.
My dear ones, one system is real, established according to God's principles, and another is artificial, established by human laws. The result of the artificial system is that God's blessings become confined within a particular class. They are covered, hidden, and restricted so that they cannot serve universal humanity. The outcome of this is the torment of fear and hunger. Thus, we see the second point, the necessities of worldly life and the easy availability of means of sustenance without anyone's favor are God's blessings. The removal of these blessings is God's punishment, and this punishment takes the form of fear and hunger. Surah Luqman expands this principle. It says, Alam tarau anna Allah sakhara lakum ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. Do you not see that Allah has subjected to you whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth? That is, not only the earth, but also the celestial spheres have been made subject to you. The entire external universe has been subdued so that you may harness the forces of nature and employ them for your benefit.
The Quranic meaning of asbagha, pouring forth blessings like a river. It continues, وَأَسْبَغَ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعَمَهُ ظَاهِرَةً وَبَاطِنَةً 31:20. And he has showered upon you his blessings, both apparent and hidden. The word asbagha means he poured forth like a river. God has made his blessings abundant. Some of these blessings are apparent, visible, and tangible before you now, while others remain hidden behind the veil of the universe, not yet perceived.
My dear ones, 1400 years ago, when human knowledge was so limited, especially among the Arabs, this was revealed. Some blessings are already visible, while countless others remain hidden. As the veils over the mysteries of nature are lifted, hidden blessings will continue to manifest. And indeed, in these 14 centuries, how many forces of nature have entered the human sphere of perception which were previously invisible and abstract, and from them humanity has derived immense benefits. Thus, God has expanded the scope of his blessings, and this expansion is not yet complete. It is an endless ocean, boundless and limitless. All the universe is bound in chains of law for the subjugation of nature. Surah Ibrahim says, Allahu allazi khalaqas samawati wal arda wa anzala minas samai ma'an fa akhraja bihi minas samirati rizqan lakum. Allah is the one who created the heavens and the earth, sent down water from the sky, and brought forth fruits as provision for you. وَسَخَّلَ لَكُمُ الْفُلْقَ لِتَجْرِيَ فِي الْبَحْرِ بِأَمْرِهِ. And he subjected to you the ships to sail upon the sea by his command. Consider, a needle of iron sinks in water, but by God's law of nature, ships weighing thousands of tons float like ducks upon the surface of the sea, carrying your goods from one place to another. See how he has subjected these things. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمْرَ دَائِبَيْنِ. And he subjected to you the sun and the moon, both constant in their courses. The sun and moon are immense celestial bodies. The sun, for instance, is 1300,000 times larger than the earth. Yet they move only along their fixed paths, never deviating.
This makes their subjugation easy, for they cannot escape their ordained course. Revelations about the universe 14 centuries ago. My dear ones, 1400 years ago, who could have explained such things? Today's scientist who travels to the moon and to Mars does so precisely because these celestial bodies move along fixed paths. If it were otherwise, if they suddenly deviated from their course midway, no one could pursue them.
This is the meaning of Dae Baini. And further it says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ, and He has subjected to you the night and the day. وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ, and He has given you from all that you asked of Him. That is, whatever was needed for your physical life, for your nourishment in this tangible world, He provided.
How much has God given to humanity? Listen to what the Quran says. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. 1434. If you try to count the blessings of Allah, you cannot enumerate them. These provisions were given for the sustenance of all humanity, but mankind seized them, monopolized them, and began to transgress, so that إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظُلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. 1434. Indeed, man is unjust and ungrateful. Each began to snatch the rights of others, hoarding whatever came into his possession. As long as nations walked upon God's ordained path, they enjoyed the freshness of life, but when their philosophy of life changed, these blessings were taken away, and they became disgraced and humiliated in the world. Their efforts and labors turned into ashes. Therefore, to avoid this fate, the Quran taught us to pray. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. 1:7. Not the path of those who incurred wrath, nor of those who went astray. My dear ones, later I will explain what happens to a nation when blessings are withdrawn. How can God-given blessings be obtained? Now the question arises, how are God's blessings obtained? He created them for the benefit of His creation, spread them upon the table of the earth, but how are they acquired and by whom? Do they come freely without effort, without toil, without work? The answer is, no, they do not come like that. In Surah Az-Zumar, though the discussion is about paradise, it also applies here. We believe in the paradise of the hereafter, but paradise is not confined to the next life alone. The blessings described in connection with paradise can also be obtained in this world, when God's system of laws is established and life is lived under them. The Quran calls this too a life of paradise. It says that in paradise, when blessings are obtained and enjoyed, the people will say, وَقَالُوا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي صَدَقَنَا وَعْدُهُ. 3974. They will say, praise be to Allah, who fulfilled His promise to us. That is, whatever He promised, do this, and you will receive that, all was fulfilled. وَأَوْرَثُنَا الْأَرْضَ نَتَبَوَّأُ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ حَيْثُ نَشَاءُ. 3974. And He gave us the land to inherit, so we may dwell in paradise wherever we wish. This refers not only to the land of paradise in the hereafter, but also to the land of this world. It means we were granted a territory, a state, where we had complete authority and perfect freedom. And further, فَنِعْمَ أَجْرُ الْعَامِلِينَ. 3974. How excellent is the reward of those who work. This shows that all blessings are obtained as the reward of work, and the work is not something casual or effortless, like sitting comfortably in a factory, shop, or office. No, blessings are earned through genuine effort, struggle, and labor. To enjoy God's blessings, continual striving is required. There is no doubt that work is necessary, but on the path to paradise, there are steep valleys and dangerous fields. Fields so perilous that life itself is at stake. The Quran says that in their lives there came a time, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. 3173. These are the people to whom others said, do you know that your enemies have gathered a great army against you? فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. 3173. Fear them. But upon hearing this, instead of being frightened or losing courage, فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. 3173.
their faith increased. وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ 3173. They said, Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best guardian. If their opponents relied upon their armies and equipment, the believers relied upon Allah and His immutable laws. They believed that even if they lacked resources or numbers, adherence to divine law would compensate for the deficiency. This reliance was their greatest strength. Thus, they advanced, and the Quran says, فَانْقَلَبُوا بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ لَمْ يَمْسَسْهُمْ سُوءٌ 3174. They returned from the battlefield laden with Allah's blessings and bounty, without suffering any harm. They followed the path pleasing to Allah. وَاتَّبَعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ 3174. So they came back with their arms full of blessings. وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَظِيمٍ 3174. Allah is the possessor of immense bounty. His treasures never diminish. No matter how much is given, they remain infinite.
The fundamental difference between the Quranic system and the secular system. My dear ones, you have seen how blessings are obtained. At this point, the basic difference between the secular system and God's system becomes clear. A secular system is one where humans, parties, nations, or groups establish laws of their own making. In acquiring blessings, they disregard divine values and laws. They seize and plunder, oppress and exploit, snatching away the possessions of the weak and poor. As the Persian verses say, Dana mi karid aha silbarad, ummate bar ummate digar charad. One sows the seed, another reaps the crop. One nation grazes upon the fields of another. This is their arrangement for acquiring blessings, and once obtained, they use them however they wish, for selfish interests, with no accountability. No one asks, how did you acquire them? How did you use them? This is what is meant by accountable to none. This is the definition of a sovereign state, a state that answers to no one, with no higher authority to demand accountability. In contrast, the Quranic system grants blessings, but it does not result in a secular state. In God's system, accountability remains to Him. The Quran describes the consequences of false systems with great clarity. In Surah Takasur, the outcome of such a system is لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمَ. You will surely see hellfire. ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينَ. And then you will see it with the eye of certainty. This is the hell where human potential is scorched, where nations witness the destruction brought by their false systems and misguided actions. There they will stand as criminals, shackled in chains, brought before the court of God for accountability. The Holy Quran clearly describes the consequences of false systems. My dear ones, observe the Quran's style of explanation. It says that when people are chained, they will be asked, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمَ. Then, on that day, you will surely be asked about the blessings. They will be questioned, how did you acquire these blessings and how did you use them? You thought that no one would ever ask you. Indeed, in this worldly life, you arranged matters so that no one questioned you. But do you not know that God's law of recompense, or mukafat-e amal, stands above all human arrangements? According to this law comes what we call destruction. And regarding destruction, the Quran says, they will be asked how they obtained blessings and where they spent them. Hazrat Umar's definition of Khilafah. My dear ones, Hazrat Umar radiyallahu anhu explained this beautifully. When asked, what is istikhlaf fil arz, or God's governance? He replied, it is that system in which one is asked, from where did you take and where did you spend? So comprehensive. 2 short phrases containing the entire truth. In God's system of governance, those in authority must give account. They are responsible, and their condition will be such that for every single coin, they will consider themselves accountable. Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib, 1797 to 1869, expressed this state in his verse, एक एक कतरे का मुझे देना पड़ा हिसाब, खून जिगर वदियते मिसजाने यार था. I had to account for every single drop. It was the blood of my heart entrusted to the beloved's eyes. Receiving blessings is God's great favor. This is the path for which prayer was made, the longing expressed. But after receiving blessings, the next step is far more difficult. Each blessing will be questioned. Was it used according to God's laws and values or not? As I said earlier, Mun'im alayhim are those nations who receive God's blessings and spend them according to divine values. For this questioning, the Quran presents powerful verses in Surah Al-Anbiya. وَقَمْ قَسَمْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ كَامَتْ ظَالِمَةً وَأَنْشَأْنَا بَعْدَهَا قَوْمًا آخَرِينَ. How many towns we destroyed that were unjust, and we raised up other people after them. Why? Because كَانَتْ ظَالِمَةً. They were unjust. Due to oppression and tyranny, they were destroyed, and other nations took their place. And what was the condition of those destroyed? The Quran says, فَلَمَّا أَحَسُّوا بَعْسَنَا إِذَا هُمْ مِنْهَا يَرْقُدُونَ. When they felt our punishment, behold, they fled from it. Here the Quran makes a profound point. Destruction does not come suddenly, overnight. It comes gradually as the consequences of injustice unfold.
The grip of divine retribution is above and stronger than human-made laws. The destructive consequences of false systems unfold gradually, imperceptibly. مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. From where they perceive not. They do not realize that destruction is being prepared. The nation rejoices, boasts, and feels secure, thinking no one will question them. But when the cumulative effect of their wrong path finally manifests in tangible form, إِذَا هُمْ مِنْهَا يَرْكُضُونَ. They flee from it. They attempt to escape the destruction. The Quran paints this vivid picture. They flee, but behind them, God's law of retribution calls out, لَا تَرْكُضُوا. Do not run away. You cannot escape. Return instead. وَارْجِعُوا إِلَى مَا أُتْرِفْتُمْ فِيهِ وَمَسَاكِنِكُمْ. Go back to the luxuries you indulged in and to your palaces. Palaces built high, decorated with the blood and sweat of laborers, filled with pleasures and comforts. Return there so that لَعَلَّكُمْ تُسْأَلُونَ. You may be questioned. Questioned. How did you acquire these? Whose toil and blood built them? Whose bones became the cement of your foundations? Obtaining blessings is difficult, but using them according to God's law is most difficult. They will be asked, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُسْأَلُونَ. You will be questioned. قَالُوا يَا وَيْلَنَا إِنَّا كُنَّا ظَالِمِينَ. They will admit, yes, we acquired these through oppression, plunder, and exploitation. But when destruction arrives, when the path reaches its end, then فَمَا زَالَتْ تِلْكَ دَعْوَاهُمْ. They will continue crying out, but it will be of no use. They will scream, but حَتَّى جَعَلْنَاهُمْ حَصِيدًا خَامِدًا. Until we made them like a harvested field, like an extinguished flame. This is the meaning of لَعَلَّكُمْ تُسْأَلُونَ. You will be questioned. Receiving blessings brings joy, but the burden of responsibility breaks the human back. The condition and responsibilities of those blessed with God's gifts. Now, let us return to صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. The path of those upon whom you bestowed blessings. This supreme blessing made the Muslim Ummah into خَيْرَ Ummah, the best community. Scattered particles became a solid rock. About them, it was said, محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those with him are firm against disbelievers, merciful among themselves. And it was declared, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Thus we made you a balanced nation, so that you may be witnesses over mankind. This was the result of living according to the laws of God's book. They became one united ummah, a central nation. Remember, you are commanded, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold fast all together to the rope of Allah, not individually but collectively, as a system, as a community, as one united ummah. And further, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Do not be divided, do not split into sects, parties or groups. The purpose of God's rope was to bind you together firmly like straws tied into a strong bundle. Thus, by holding fast to the rope of Allah, you became one united ummah. Blood relation only binds bodies together, while ideological and faith-based force binds hearts. Remember, if you hold firmly to this, the condition will be جميعاً, collectively, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Do not be divided into sects. And then it says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember Allah's blessing upon you. إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً. When you were enemies to one another. This was not some earlier generation. It was you. You were bitter enemies of each other. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Then He joined your hearts together. God did not merely establish a visible collective system of life, He placed love in your hearts, binding them together. Faith is such a bond that it does not only unite bodies, it unites hearts. Thus, He said, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Recall your past condition. Divided into sects and groups, enemies to one another. God gave you a system of life and this was His blessing. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. He joined your hearts, and so فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. By His blessing you became brothers.
Reflect upon Allah's blessing. You were once enemies, but He joined your hearts and made you brothers. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَ حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. You were on the brink of a pit of fire. فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. And He saved you from it. His blessing rescued you from destruction, made you the best community, خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ, a united ummah, and granted you the position of A'laun, supreme, exalted, among nations. How was this achieved? Only through holding firmly to the rope of Allah, Hablullah, through following the Quran. And He warned, do not divide into sects, do not fragment into groups. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. Thus Allah makes His signs clear to you so that you may be guided. You prayed, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, guide us to the straight path. And He explained, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ, so that you may walk upon true guidance. This is the greatest blessing, unity of the ummah through holding firmly to the rope of Allah. Islam is the name of a united ummah, while division into sects is a great shirk. Let me state clearly, Islam means ummati wahida, a single united community. This unity is achieved only through holding firmly to the Quran, the rope of Allah. If the ummah ceases to be united, Islam ceases to exist within it. If it divides into sects, parties, separate states, or different nations, then it is no longer ummati wahida. Know this, Islam cannot exist unless the ummah is united. And the only way to achieve unity is through the Quran. Just as the Quran united the ummah before, it can unite it again. This is the foundation of all blessings. Collective system, united ummah, adherence to the Quran, and decisions in every sphere of life according to it. This is the state of Ummati Wahida, the state of receiving God's blessings. Now return to a passage from Surah Al Fatiha. Iyyaka na'budu, you alone we worship, wa iyyaka nasta'een, and you alone we ask for help. Then, Ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us to the straight path, followed by Sirat al-Ladhina an'amta alayhim, the path of those upon whom you bestowed blessings. The practical proof of Iyyaka na'budu is to keep God's blessings open. Iyyaka na'budu,
We worship you alone. The Quran says, وَاشْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. Be grateful for Allah's blessings, if indeed you worship Him alone. You declared, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ.
we accept only your authority. If this is not mere words, but reality, if truly Iyyahu ta'budun, you worship Him alone, then the tangible proof is Washkuru ni'matallahi in kuntum Iyyahu ta'budun. Spend God's blessings according to His values and principles. If your claim is true, gratitude becomes obligatory. And when gratitude is fulfilled, then وَإِسْتَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ, your Lord proclaimed, if you are grateful, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, I will surely increase you. But if you are ungrateful, وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيد, if you are ungrateful, my punishment is severe. Hazar e chira dastan, sakht hain fitrat ki tazeerein. Beware, O reckless ones, nature's punishments are severe. The final verse of Surah Al Fatiha shows our condition and calls for self-reform. My dear ones, the last verse reflects our present state. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, not the path of those who incurred wrath, nor of those who went astray. Looking at ourselves, we see this is our condition today. This is God's criterion. Are we mun'im alayhim, blessed, or maghdub alayhim, wrath-stricken? Which blessings of God do we possess? None. So the question arises, how can blessings be regained? The Quran answers, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَكُ مُغَيِّرًا نِعْمَةً أَنْعَمَهَا قَوْمًا حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah does not change the blessings He bestowed upon a people until they change what is within themselves. And Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. This is a fundamental principle. God does not withdraw blessings unless the people themselves undergo inner change. External revolutions are reflections of internal psychological transformations. Thus, if you wish to regain blessings, you must create inner change. The meaning of psychological change. First, understand God's values, principles and laws, fix them firmly in your mind, then let them descend into the depths of your heart. What does it mean to enter the heart? For example, you read in a book or hear from a physician that arsenic is deadly. You understand intellectually. But when you internalize it, if I consume arsenic, I will die, then a transformation occurs, you resolve never to consume it. Similarly, merely listening to Quranic messages and admiring them, saying Subhanallah, how beautiful, is not enough. That is intellectual satisfaction, not inner transformation. True change occurs when you realize I will be destroyed if I live under my own desires. If I want to avoid destruction, I must align myself with God's values. Only then will the blessings that were withdrawn return. Creating this change within the nation, my life's mission. My dear ones, I have made it my mission to bring about this change within the nation. Why? Because regarding the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran says, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. He teaches them the book and wisdom and purifies them. He taught the Quran rationally with insight, imparted wisdom, and then brought about transformation within their selves. This inner transformation gave them new life. God and His angels have been waiting for centuries to see when we change our condition. Even today, my dear ones, the method is the same. The values of the Quran must be taught in such a way that a person feels them deep within his heart, that truly living according to them gives life and violating them brings certain destruction. From these details, listen carefully. When we say, Ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us to the straight path, and then we say, Sirat al-Lazina an'amta alayhim, the path of those upon whom you bestowed blessings. The Quran explains in detail what these blessings are, what the condition of nations is who receive them, and what happens to those from whom these blessings are taken away. And then the next words of the Quran, the next verse await us. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, not the path of those who incurred wrath, nor of those who went astray. This we will take up in the next lesson. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Our Lord, accept from us. Indeed, you are the all-hearing, the all-knowing.